Hi, I'm Adam from Inflectra, and in this video we're going to be showing you the new features of Rapise 6.0, the latest version of Inflectra's test automation tool. In today's video, we'll be first outlining the new features in Rapise 6.0 point by point, then we have a live application demo, and at the end we had some time for questions.
So moving forward into today's presentation, as I mentioned, the first thing we'll be talking about in Rapise, the latest version, is the UI changes. And this is the biggest thing you're going to notice on the new version. We've retained all the functionality that in the older versions of Rapise, 4 and 5, but we've completely changed the UI. We've got rid of the ribbon, we've changed the start page, we've added menus, and I'll explain as we get into the live application demo some of the reasons behind it. But the primary design decision we made was, how do we reduce the number of clicks and navigations to get to commonly used features, and how do we make it so you spend more time using Rapise and less time trying to figure out how to find something? When Rapise was first released, we used a ribbon concept, which was very popular back in 2010, but ribbons have some major usability issues that we've learned along the way, particularly when you have lots of different ribbons with different features on them. It requires you to navigate backwards and forwards and find the right ribbon. And some of these issues manifest in other applications like Excel or Word, but we found them particularly bad in Rapise. And so in the latest version 6, we decided to go right ahead, remove the ribbon, and go to a much more powerful, much more compact menu and toolbar system. And the emphasis is that things that are frequently used are in the toolbar, things like recording, playing, spying, debugging, accessing the commonly used files like the main test, the user-defined features, the Rvl script, adding and removing rows, editing, all of those commonly used features are in the toolbars, and those toolbars will hide and show depending on which view you're in. And then anything that's not in the toolbar is now going to be available in the menu. And the menu gives you access to every single feature and option in Rapise right from the same page, versus having to go into the individual ribbons and try and find where things are. So a lot of functionality may look different in terms of where things are. The icons have changed. We've given it an overhaul from a visual perspective as well to make it more modern and ready for the next 10 years of Rapise. And so some of those icons have changed as well. Plus, we've also updated some of the icons to match the new designs used in SpiroTest. For example, the test case icons are now the yellowy orange flat diamond shape. Similarly, throughout the application, we've gone for a flatter, more contemporary look. So that's the other big change on the UI. In addition to the UI changes, some other things we've done which will be useful for specific users is we've added additional support for the SAP Fiori platform, which is their new web-based replacement for the classic SAP interface. We've added some initial support for that in Rapise 6.0. As users start to adopt the SAP Fiori platform, we will be adding more functionality to support more complex user interfaces in this new platform. Not to leave out our classic Dynamics user base, we've also added support for Dynamics 365, their unified client interface. This was a completely new mobile responsive interface that they're using throughout the Dynamics 365 platform, both Dynamics 365 Business Central, 365 for operations, and 365 for sales. And unfortunately, this is a completely new user interface. It completely changed the way that the Dynamics 365 looks and works. So we did have to build that again into Rapise. So if you are using Dynamics 365 and some of your older scripts aren't working because you're using Rapise 5.7, 5.4, you won't be able to necessarily use them. Don't worry, we've added the support for Dynamics 365 UCI in the latest version. So please upgrade to Rapise 6.0, and then you can start using the newest version of Dynamics 365 interface. In addition, we've also added some support for Dynamics Nav Classic, that's the desktop version of Dynamics Nav, and we've added some support for menu items and additional UI elements. We've also added support for Dynamics AX, where you can now record elements appearing in child windows. Sometimes those were tricky in the past. We've added new support for Dynamics AX as well. So if you are using Dynamics AX or Nav, don't feel left out. It isn't everything that's gone into 365. We're ensuring that all the older versions are also being updated as we get feedback in for clients. Another major feature in Rapise 6.0 is the new documentation and help system. If you used it in the past, you may have noticed we had a Windows help, compiled help inside of Rapise that was somewhat okay to use. We also had a bunch of PDF manuals that contained some of the more in-depth tutorials and setup guides. We also then had some of those same PDFs on our website. We also had some of those same guides in web form on our website. So All of our documentation was kind of spread across different platforms. It could have been a PDF, it could have been a web page on our website, or it could have been a compiled help on your local machine. We've now centralized all the documentation help into the same system. So there is now a centralized help system for Rapise. If you go to our website, there's a whole new URL with all the documentation. It looks like this. I'll show it to you live afterwards. In addition, inside Rapise, that exact same help system is now available locally. So if you're running on a machine that's not connected to the internet, or you want to be able to browse things locally, the entire help system that's on the online channel is also now replicated in Rapise. So you haven't got to bounce between PDFs and compiled help files in HTML. It's all the same. And that way, it makes it much easier to find things, whether you're using the interface or just searching. Everything is much easier to find and consistent. If you have any feedback on this new documentation help system, please let us know, because we are going to be adding that same system to Spira Team and Spira Test and Spira Plan later in the year. So if there are things you like about this new help system, please let us know, and we will definitely be using that as we migrate Spira Team into the same system. If there are things you don't like and you miss about the old help system, please let us know as well, because before we adopt that for Spira Team, we'd love to make some changes to make it even better. So with that being said, I'm now going to dive into a live application demo for Rapise. And this demo is both for new users who may not have seen Rapise for a while or ever seen Rapise before. It will give you an overview of how Rapise works. But also for those who are familiar with Rapise version 5 or version 4, you'll see what's changed. And I'll spend some time illustrating how we've changed the user interface along the way. So I'm going to jump out of PowerPoint and go into the live application. This is Rapise, the latest version. And when you first start Rapise, you'll notice we've actually changed the start page some. We've tried to simplify and really focus on the most important things. So what you have now are the two playlists. We have an initial playlist called the Get Starting list that contains short 5-minute videos that will walk you through using Rapise for the first time. Recording your first test, learning objects, using it with Spira Test, reporting, using the Rapise visual language or JavaScript, and really gets you up and running. It's equivalent to doing the Quick Start Guide. We've also provided a link to the Quick Start Guide right here, which is right available. And then we've also added another playlist as well, which is our in-depth webinar series. And in fact, this webinar you're listening to now will be on that channel. So that way, all the webinars we've posted on YouTube over the last couple of years to do with Rapise for different technologies and platforms, for example, Salesforce, Dynamics, web apps, Box, Dynamics 365, and so on. All of those different webinars are now available on a central playlist inside of our YouTube channel, and you can now access it right here from Rapise. So when a user starts using Rapise for the first time, you as the manager can point them directly to this playlist to get started, and then once they've cut their teeth with that, they can then jump into the in-depth webinar series and then look at the specific apps they're using and then use the appropriate video. We've also simplified it to show all the samples on the side. We've got the list of online resources which now point to the new help system rather than the old PDFs, and so that way it's much easier to get going. We've got rid of some of the other clutter that was on this page and really streamlined it. Also, there's the option to hide this page when you first start the application, so once you're familiar with Rapise, it won't keep loading each time. Okay, in addition to the changes we've made to the start page, we've also made major changes to the application itself. Well, first of all, and the most obvious change would be there's no ribbon. So that big ribbon that was about 1 inch high has now gone. We've also replaced all the icons with new flat modern icons. We've changed all the icons for file types as well in the File Explorer. We've changed all the object icons in the object tree. So the buttons look different, the checkboxes, all of the global objects. Everything is a more contemporary modern style. The other thing we've done is we've removed the settings dialog. Previously, the settings dialog was squashed in here as a third option. We found in testing that customers find it really hard to use those settings. They're very squashed. They're not often used and they get in the way. And then when you do want to set them, you can't really use them in an usable way. So we've now moved them into their own settings section. Also, we've made it so you can now hide these output console. One of the pieces of feedback we had is if you've got a lot of tests and you've got a lot of steps, you want to focus on that. You don't want to have all of this window on the bottom taken up with output windows and errors when you're not using it. So you can now hide that. When an error occurs, it will reappear. So now moving on to the menus that you'll see. First of all, for those who are used to the old ribbon, we've now gone to a centralized menu system. So every single feature can be now accessed directly from the menu. So creating tests, saving to Spira, saving locally, saving into a new name, obviously closing the application. They're all in the file menu. The edit menu contains all the features that used to be spread across several ribbons. If you're using a table editor like the RVL or the new spreadsheet editor that we have, the tools for doing that are right here, inserting, deleting rows. The text functions that used to be in the edit ribbon are now here for cutting and copy and pasting. That can be used for both tables and RVL, or it can be used for text if you're using a JavaScript file. There's also the undo and redo I put here as well. And then the view menu lets you see some of the pages. So some of the shortcuts, things like I want to see the start page because I forgot where my video playlist is. I want to use the Spiro dashboard. It's right here as well. Also, from the ribbon, we used to have separate sections for web services. Those are now available right here in the view menu. You can do show rest or show soap if you have any. We'll create one in a minute. Also, if you've got manual steps defined, those are also visible here now as well. We've also changed some of the icons so that before the main test, which was the main JavaScript test, now has a slightly different icon. It's called test versus test.js, and then the user is where you can find all your user functions. So you can now be one click away from your main test file, your user functions, and your RVL codeless test script. Those are the three most important shortcuts you'll find. In addition, you can also find accessing Spiro from any of these three yellow sort of diamond shaped icons. One will save to Spiro, one will open, and one will see the manual steps. Also, the spy tools are now on their own dedicated menu. Right here, you can see all the different spies, and the current spy is shown, so you know exactly which one you're using. Record and play are right here, as they're often used. And then the debugger. We've centralized the debugger with the internal debugger, and now it's simply a flat on or off, depending on how it's highlighted. Similarly, the test items which are on the toolbar, they're also available on the test menu, test settings. The settings menu that used to be down here, that was the tab called test settings, that's now available right here in its own pop-up. That means it can now be much bigger than before. So if you have all those settings and long paths, you're not limited to this small little window that's crammed in, which is nice. Also, you can see all of the settings here, not just the current test, but also the global settings for the entire application and any utilities you want. The tools menu is where we've centralized all of the more advanced features, things that you don't use so often, so they're not in a toolbar typically. But that way, if you need to access the libraries you're using, the web server, create a new web service, that's right here as well, soap and rest. And also starting manual steps for the first time. The web services, as I mentioned, also the object manager. So if you are going to create objects in one test case and want to share them with another test case, that's what the object manager is for. It's right here under the tools menu. So if there are things that you missed from the ribbon, some of those that are not used as frequently are now directly in the tools section. Similarly, if you've got a functional test and you want to convert it to Neoload for load testing, it's right here in the tools menu. And then lastly, all the settings that used to be on their own settings ribbon, they're now in their dedicated menu entry just under settings. The global settings is where you see everything that's application wide. If you want to change the test for Spiro test connection, that's right here. If you want to change the browser profiles for built-in native browsers like Firefox and Chrome and IE, those are all right here. All the settings for Selenium integration, if you're going to play things back through WebDriver, they're right here in the Selenium. We support different profiles. We've also expanded some of the profiles to support more of the cloud platforms. Things like remote WebDriver specific connections, things like that are available. And then lastly, we do have the mobile settings right here if you want to be able to connect to Appium and any of the mobile devices, either native devices, physical devices, simulated devices, or if you're using a device cloud like Browser Stack or Source Labs, you can use that right here as well. So that's some of the main UI changes before we start recording some tests. I wanted to highlight that. And then the help system, as I mentioned, has been completely redone. If you go to help and help, you'll now see this is the local help, but it looks the same as the online help. So the local help is stored locally, but it is ultimately an embedded web page. So it's very easy to navigate. You can look at all of the user guides. So for example, getting started with any of the technologies. If you're doing mobile testing, it's right here. The setup's right here. Configuring the profiles is right here. Recording and playing. Previously, this was in a PDF. If you want to look at, let's say, the getting started with the web testing using RVL, that used to be in a quick start guide that was a PDF. It's all in here. It's easy to navigate like that. Similarly, all the manuals have been converted into the central system. So now it's a standardized way to find everything you want. All the object libraries are also here. So for example, you're doing some web testing and you want to interact with, let's say, an HTML5 number box. You can see right here, that's the object, that's the properties it has, that's what it can do. Everything is documented in the same system. So we've consolidated all the PDFs, all the web pages, and all the embedded help into one place. And the same help system is available online. You just go to Help, Online Help, and it goes to this new dedicated URL, rapisedoc.inflectra.com, and everything's up to the minute here. So if there are things in your online help that maybe are out of date because you're using a newer version, you can go to the website to get the latest version at all times. It also provides access to our UI testing playground. This is a set of test scenarios we've created and test applications. So if there are specific things you're struggling with, for example, you're struggling with dynamic IDs or trying to test a web application that's got hidden layers and you're not sure because the application is really hard to interact with, we've got some samples here where you can see these applications in action. We've got samples of how you can get around that problem. And so those are available right here also from the UI testing playground link on the main help menu. So that's the new help system. So now let's move into using the new version. With changes to the user interface, the core functionality is largely the same apart from where things are accessed. So if we're going to go ahead and record a simple test here against our classic library information system, you go into Rapise the same way as you would have done before. You'll go into this new settings menu and you'll first want to make sure that you're connected to SpiroTest if you're using SpiroTest. Hit test, connection is good, save. And then you go to the new file menu and you can do create new test. And when you first create the test, it's going to connect to SpiroTest. You can also create your test locally, and that's great if you're not using SpiroTest or you're just creating a test that maybe isn't for production use, maybe it's just for training, or maybe it's not something you want to necessarily use for real, but you want to just play around with the system. You can then go into the section, the folder that you want to put the test in. So let's create a regression test. We'll choose a new test case option. We'll call it sample web test for webinar, something like that. If there are any manual steps, if it's an existing one, they'll be right here. In this case, there aren't any. We can then choose the appropriate technology we're using. We're going to be testing a web app, so we choose the bottom option. If this was a Java app or a WPF or Windows app or a desktop application platform like Dynamics AX or Nav, we would choose the first option. If it's mobile, using iOS or Android, we choose the third option. We can also record manual tests, which is really great if you want to be able to create on the fly tests for your manual testers or document your tests, and you want Rapise to capture screenshots and actions for you automatically. We'll choose web. We'll choose the Firefox browser, hit OK. And we're going to be doing Rvl. We'll also show you JavaScript a little bit. So let's do Rvl. And then this is the Rvl editor right here. Close these off. And the new editor is, again, very similar to what you would be familiar with in Rapise 5.7. We've changed some of the icons and coloration to make it a bit easier to use. So when you select things, the borders are a little different color, like that. It's like a green box. Apart from that, we've added some functionality around parameterization and some other usability enhancements, but for the most part, it'll be familiar. The big thing is that the options for accessing the Rvl menu are right here. So if you want to add a row, remove a row, or view the parameters for that particular operation, these are now right here on the main toolbar for Rvl. So let's go ahead and record a test. To do that, we're going to use the recording option on the main toolbar. And it's right over here. So let's go ahead and hit record. And it's going to bring up the recorder. And as I click in the application, I'll do it slowly so you can see what's going on. It's going to record items right here. So let's record login. Let me type it correctly this time. And you notice if you make a mistake, you can always remove it right here. So I'll just delete that. Perfect. I've got a couple of clicks I don't need. Perfect. And let's go in here and hit login. There you go, I've logged in. I'm going to use the new verify option to verify it. We made one change in this new version as well that I'll mention. In the past, if you're familiar, we had different kinds of text. We had the inner text. We had the bitmap, obviously, but we had the inner text, we had the node text, and depending on what you're testing, sometimes one is correct, sometimes the other is correct. Inner text contains all the text of all the child elements. Node text is just the text from the lowest level element. We have created a new text element which finds the most appropriate one in most cases. So you can use that new option which previously wasn't available. So if you use text, that's often now the safest versus having to decide, is it node text or is it inner text? Okay, so let's use text. Hit OK, like that. And then we're going to click on one step further, click on book management. Let's create a new book. Adam's book is what we're going to call it. We'll change the genre, hit insert, use the verify option to verify my book. Pops up the verification. That's how I use inner text this time, that's fine. We're going to log out to restore to starting point, and then hit finish. And it's going to warn me that the recording is available. Another option we added is now the ability not only to add the recording, but you can also insert it. So you can now append it to the end of where you are, or insert it at a specific point. So I'll append it to the end. Notice that in the new version, we've now got all this extra space down the bottom when you start to put data in. Unless you have active warnings or active issues that you're looking at, this bottom section is all freed up, giving you much more real estate to actually interact with the tests and build out your test cases. So if you look at the object tree, we can still expand that out, and we can still drag and drop items. They've got new icons, but they're still largely the same. Go in here and click on a login link. You can do that. Drag and drop, and it builds into your test. Okay, so that's how you would build a simple recording. Just to prove it works, we're going to hit the playback button. As you can see, it's doing the playback. And in Rapise, you have options during playback to capture screenshots. You can capture the information that's going on. Also, you can tell it to stop on an error or continue. Right now, it's stopping. It's not any errors anyway. But if you wanted to change it to stop on error, you go into the settings, and you can basically go to the settings for the test, and you can choose to stop on a failure right here. And you can also choose it to capture screenshots. So let's capture some screenshots. So I'll choose that option. So we're going to capture playback. Capture execution. We're also going to include it into our report as well. And when you run it from Spira, the same thing happens. It will bring all the information back into Spira Test or Spira Team. So that looked pretty good. Let's just run it one more time, this time with screenshot capture turned on. Hit play. Oops, that's another screen of mine. Let's go there. Excellent. It's played back. Looks good. If you look at the screen flow, you can see exactly what's going on right here. It's giving you a screen flow every click, what it's doing, and that way you can see exactly step by step what happened, and when it fails, you can find out why it failed. That's good. Now, we've only got a pass test case, so it would be nice to see if it failed. So what I'll do is I'm just going to make a change to my test. Let's make it data-driven, and let's run the same test a couple of times, and this time we'll have it work the first time and fail the second time. So let's go ahead, and we're going to add what's called a map. A map is a set of data that you run your test case through. So we go to the flow option, and if you notice we've got these new icons here, make clear which is a condition, which is a branch, which is a loop. So we're going to create a map. We're going to create a map called users and logins. We're going to have two columns. One will be username. One is going to be password. I'm going to get rid of the other ones because we don't need those. Username will be librarian. Password will be librarian. The second will be admin. And the password will be bad. And we know that's actually the wrong password. That's not correct. And now we want to log in. So let's go ahead and select this whole block of tests like that, and we can choose wrap selection in loop. We're going to loop over the map. That's the name of our map. And the other thing we want to do is change it so that it uses this login and password rather than the hard-coded value. So I just change this to use the map. One is the login. Oops, verify the use the password. And then we need to verify the data, so we'll change the verification step, which are these 4 lines. Change the verification step right here to basically also use that same data. There's my verification block. So I'm going to use that and basically, oops, I wiped it out. I did not want to do that. Let me fix it. So no problem. And I want to make that the You know what? I can't remember. Let me just go re-record it even easier. Or just use undo. There we go. There we go. I'm just going to re-record this section because I accidentally deleted it with escape. So let's delete that. Keep my cursor there. And I just want to re-record the verification. So I'll log in as librarian. Okay, and I want to re-record my verification. That's good. I want it to go create new login. I want to do it right here. So I'll insert a row. And I'm going to record. And I want to just re-verify that. So if you accidentally delete something in your script like I did, it's not a problem. Just go to verification, do Control and 1, inner text, hit OK, hit finish, and then choose this time insert rather than append. And there you go. So it puts it back. And so I wanted to change this to use my map, which was users and logins, and it should be username. Get rid of that extra row. So now I'm looping through my list of 2 logins, and I'm going to be going through all these steps. I'm going to log in, create the book, log out. The first time it should work, and the second time it should fail. And so I need to make sure that my settings are set to fail on error, so it doesn't keep doing it twice all the way through. So I'll do that by going to settings, and just make sure it should say stop on error, true. If you want to keep going multiple times and keep going, even if it fails, just change that to false. That's up to you. All right, so my test is ready. I just need to log out of Firefox so that it's ready at the starting point. Hit the play button, and now it's going to play through twice. The first time, it's going to hopefully pass, and the second time, it's going to hopefully fail. So this should be the pass case, should log out. Now it logs in. It's going to try and log in with admin as bad, and it's going to throw a red message up or something like that. There we go. Can't. And now when it tries to verify, it's going to stop and fail and throw us an error. And because I have the screenshot capture turned on, it's going to include those as well. So here we go. It ran the first time through as we expected, all green. Second time it hit that point, could not find librarian on the page. It was trying to verify that link and expand it. So one thing you'll notice in the new version, and this is the reason why I wanted to show it, we've actually added some more information. So previously in the old versions of Rapise, if you found, for example, object not found on page, you were often left to try and figure out, why was this the case? Now in this case, it's actually an expected fail because that object literally isn't on the page. It couldn't log in, so that's correct. And if you look at the screenshot, you'd even find that in here. It's not on the page, so that makes sense. But sometimes it's not because the application is behaving badly. It's because your test has changed. For some reason it doesn't work. So we have embedded here different things you can look at to try and figure out why the test failed if it was not meant to fail. So one thing could be your application is running too slow, and so Rapise moved ahead and actually was not the application wasn't ready yet. And then we have techniques for how to sort that out, changing the global playback speed, adding weights, telling Rapise to try more times. There are many different options. Sometimes it's because the application changed in between, and there are techniques we have also for dealing with that. Also, the object locators may have changed. So how do we find that link on the page or that label? Maybe we record it in a way that's not going to be stable across multiple page loads. And Rapise has some tools, and we have some articles about that. So the key thing is, though, we've embedded inside the actual report now key things you can look at to help you and your testers and your test engineers find out why things aren't working and provide assistance. So that way they haven't got to go searching in the help for that error message. We have all the help links right here embedded. And that's a new thing in version 6. So other than that, in terms of the reporting is largely the same in terms of what Rapise offers. In addition, of course, you can run this through SpiraTest and SpiraTeam and get all of the enterprise reporting that you get in SpiraTeam. The report is now available as a separate menu entry. It's no longer its own ribbon. You can still view it as a plain or a nested report. You can export to Excel PDF. We've added a new option, which is to export to XPS, which is the Microsoft alternative to PDF. So that's another option we provide now. You can also choose the columns you want to include in the report, same as before. And you can also merge cells if you want to change the layout. So there are lots of different layout options here. The new one was the XPS option. Everything else was available in the old version, but was before on that ribbon. Now it's on the central menu. We do provide toolbar options to get to the most frequently accessed features. We don't try and stuff every single thing into the toolbar. So that's one difference in the design. If you're looking for things and you don't see them on the toolbar, that is intentional. We're trying to keep the toolbar only for the most frequently accessed things. If you want to access things that are less frequent, then that's where you'll need to go to the menus. And every single feature in Rapise is on the menus. So if you wanted to, for example, configure mobile profiles, integrate with Neoload, install the Java bridge for testing Swing apps, those are all here. Tools for web services are all here. Everything that you would have had before on the menu, on the ribbons, is now in the menu, and then we just surface the key items on the toolbar. So that's really an overview of the latest version. We think it's the best version of Rapise since we released the product. We've taken a lot of feedback from customers and users around how they use the tool. We've streamlined the user interface. We've had a lot of small improvements too. There are at least 50 different items in our release notes, things around the different libraries, supporting Boolean values in RVL, being able to have better coloration of RVL scripts, highlighting options, different XPath tools we've added. So there's a lot of small things that make a lot of differences to users in specific situations. So please do check out the release notes. One thing I'll mention is if you are upgrading Rapise from an earlier revision, please make sure you uninstall Rapise completely first, then download the new version from our website, install the new version, and it will then look like this. All the data in Rapise is stored in either Spira Team, or Spira Test, or on your local file system. None of that is affected by uninstalling the product. So that was today's presentation on Rapise 6.0. With that, I'd like to hand over to any questions. So if you'd like to ask a question about the new version, things that have changed, things that are the same, or just general questions, now is the time. Please write them in the chat window, or if you'd like to just unmute your line and ask me, that's also fine. And while we're waiting for questions to come in, if there are any, please note this is only an introduction to Rapise 6.0. There are 7 webinars coming out starting in a couple of weeks from my colleagues that will dive into Rapise in a very deep way. We're going to cover everything from basic automation, web testing, data-driven testing. It's a full set of webinars that will go through in more detail. So the question that came in first of all is, are there any improvements done to the source code editor? That's a good question. Let's have a look. So the source code editor is when you want to look in things in JavaScript. So I'll just grab some of this code to actually put into JavaScript to make it a bit easier. One thing we did do is if you paste in from RVL, we do actually include the comments, I believe. So that's one new thing we did. So copy selection as JavaScript. We'll go into the user file, put it in here, function XYZ. So that all goes in here. So in terms of the code editor, we still have the drag and drop features that we had before, like this. We still have the code folding, so you can do Intellisense, first of all, code completion like this. That's all available. And then there is the folding, where you can minimize things like that. So that's all the same. Most of the code side, I'll be honest, didn't change as much as the RVL side. Mainly because it was already there. There are some changes in terms of the editor. So the stuff that used to be in this editor is right here. We still have debugging support for the breakpoints. If you run it through the debugger, we do have, I believe, some enhancements on the watch window. So some of the things around the watch windows have been improved. We've also made it so that you can at least hide the code window. The IRO window, giving you more room for your code. That was one of the things people had requested a lot, where it was kind of annoying. So that was the main thing, but not so much. Most of the changes were on the core UI and the RVL. Data-driven automation, data source rules logic. The question about data-driven automation, a simple example of data-driven automation is right here, where I use an inline map. That's where you get a map and you basically can loop through these steps, in this case just twice, but it could be more than that. You can do a lot of other flows. You can, for example, go in and add a whole new sheet with just the data. You can even have a spreadsheet that's nothing to do with RVL. You can go in here and say create spreadsheet and make it external data, for example, like that. And we have a spreadsheet editor. So you can actually do that directly from a spreadsheet like this and have RVL pick those up. We can also get the data from a database. So if you're using a SQL database, that is available right here from the global namespace, right here, database. One thing we did do is we have added Intellisense support to spreadsheets. So when you attach to one, it's available right here now as well as the global object that was always available in the spreadsheet tab. We've now got the list of individual spreadsheets that you have right here, so that you can just drag and drop and say attach, for example. So we've added some improvements there about doing that. Actually, I need RVL, not spreadsheet. Do that again. There you go, like that. So they're having some improvements in terms of the object tree and how spreadsheets are represented. Also, you can get data from a web service, from the tools web services. We're not going to obviously go through that right now. They will be covered in the individual sessions in the 7-part series webinar. But we do have that available to do different and more advanced data driven than just my simple inline sheet. And in terms of logic, logic can be done either in RVL using an if-then. So we could go in here and say, and again, let me just grab a couple of rows and say, I want to wrap that in an if-then. So now I've wrapped it in an if-then condition. So you can do branching directly in RVL, or if you're more of a code person, you of course could always do it in code. If x equals 1, do that, else do the other. So you can do it in code, or you can do it in RVL. And if you do it in code, you can of course call the code from RVL. So you can go in here and just say, okay, I want to reuse that function. It's right here, xyz. I want to invoke it, and should just go right here. Oh no, that's right. I think if I remember correctly, user functions are the one kind I have to do this way with the menus. So go to functions, and then choose xyz, like that. And there you go. If there were any parameters, they would appear here, but this is a empty parameter function. Okay, so another question came in. Let's have a look. From Divya, thanks for your question. When reading a data in a map from Excel, can we read it vertically? Like reading column names, current text first row as column as okay. So can you read it so that the columns are the data, not the rows? I think that's the question. So yes, a map can be both ways. I chose a map that was based on columns. You can have a map that's based, on rows. You can make a map that's based on columns like that. So now it's a bit hard to think of it this way, but it's basically like this is the username, user 1, user 2. No, hold on, no, I'm getting confused. Password, it's the other way around. So you can do it this way, which is the reverse. User 2, user 3. It's basically it's transposed. Pass 1, pass 2, pass 3. So you can do it this way as well. That's where you have the columns rather than the rows being the data.
Thanks for watching today's video on Rapise 6.0, the latest version of our test automation platform. If you'd like to learn more about test automation, test management, or other aspects of the Agile methodology, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great day.